Before this story begins, take just a second. If you believe that some moments change us forever, if you've ever felt something you shouldn't have felt, and if you enjoy true stories that linger in your mind long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to the channel now. Because stories like this aren't just heard, they're felt. Now let me tell you how it all started. When I first heard the name Daniel, it meant nothing to me. He wasn't a stranger I'd locked eyes with in a crowded room. He wasn't a man who'd brushed past me on the street, leaving curiosity behind. He was simply a name that floated casually out of my husband's mouth at the dinner table, a name mentioned between bites of food and complaints about traffic. Daniel closed the deal. Daniel kept his head when everyone else panicked. Honestly, I don't know how he stays so calm under pressure. Mark worked downtown at one of those firms that looked impressive from the outside. Glass walls, sleek conference rooms, men in tailored suits who measured their worth by promotions and emails sent after midnight. Daniel was one of those men. Or so I assumed. In my mind, he blended into the background with all the others. Faceless colleagues. Firm handshakes. Forced laughter at corporate jokes. Nothing special. Nothing personal. Just another part of my husband's professional world. A world I hovered near but never truly belonged to. The Friday Mark suggested hosting dinner, I already knew how the evening would go. "I think it'll be nice," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "Just a few people from work." A few people. Which meant hours of polite smiling and nodding. Listening to conversations I didn't care about. Playing the role I'd grown far too good at, the perfect wife. I hadn't auditioned for that role. But somehow, I'd memorized all the lines. Still I agreed. Because that's what I always did. Like the stillness before a storm no one else could sense. When I passed the wine, his fingers brushed mine. Accidental. Brief. But my breath caught anyway. When our eyes met across the table, his smile tilted. Not wider, just knowing. And in that instant, I felt seen. Not as Mark's wife. Not as the hostess. But as me at the door. As guests began to leave, time slowed. Mark was distracted. Laughing with someone else, recounting a story I'd heard too many times. And suddenly, it was just Daniel and me. "Dinner was wonderful," he said quietly. "You have a way of making people feel comfortable." My voice came out softer than intended. "Thank you." And then, that look. Not flirtation. Not politeness. Recognition. His eyes held mine without apology or retreat. As if we were both standing on the edge of something unnamed. And choosing, just for that moment, not to step away. The world narrowed. Sounds faded. And in that silence I felt it. Something dangerous. Something intoxicating. Something I knew, deep down, I would never forget. Then it was gone. A nod. A polite goodbye. The door closed. But the moment didn't. That look followed me everywhere. Into the kitchen as I washed dishes. Into the bedroom as Mark talked and talked. Into the darkness as I stared at the ceiling. Because in that single glance, something inside me had awakened. And once awakened, it doesn't simply go back to sleep. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay beside Mark, listening to the familiar rhythm of his breathing, staring at the ceiling as shadows shifted slowly across it. The room felt the same as it always had. Our bed, our walls, our shared silence. And yet, something about it felt unfamiliar. Because my mind wasn't there. It was at the front door. It was in that pause between words. It was trapped inside a look that had lasted only seconds, but echoed endlessly. I kept replaying it, telling myself I was being foolish. That it meant nothing. That I was turning politeness into fantasy simply because my life had grown predictable. But no matter how many times I tried to reason with myself, my body remembered before my mind could argue. The way my chest had tightened. The way my breath had caught. The way I had felt noticed. The weekend passed quietly. Mark slept late. We ran errands. We made small talk about groceries and bills and plans that had already been decided long ago. Everything looked normal. But inside me, something hummed beneath the surface. I found myself checking my phone more often than usual, even though I had no reason to. There were no messages waiting. No missed calls. And yet, a part of me expected something, or someone. By Monday morning, I told myself it would fade. It had to. Daniel was just my husband's coworker. A man who had stepped briefly into my world and stepped right back out. That should have been the end of it. But life has a way of testing the lies we tell ourselves. That was the part that scared me the most. That evening, Mark came home later than usual. He loosened his tie, dropped his keys into the bowl by the door, and sighed the kind of tired sigh that meant his day had been long. Daniel stayed late again, he said casually, pouring himself a drink. Saved us from a mess with a client. There it was. His name. Spoken like it was nothing. I kept my back turned, pretending to focus on the stove, hoping Mark wouldn't notice the way my shoulders stiffened. That's good, I said evenly. Sounds like he's reliable. Yeah, Mark replied. You'd like him. It happened 2 days later. I was folding laundry, the television murmuring in the background, when my phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number. For a moment, I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. When I picked it up, my heart began to race before I even opened the message, before I had any reason to. Daniel. Emily. I hope this isn't inappropriate. Mark gave me your number in case I needed the dinner recipe. I just wanted to say, I enjoyed meeting you. I stared at the screen. Read it again. Then again. There was nothing explicit about it. Nothing improper. And yet, the simplicity of it sent a rush through me I couldn't explain. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could ignore it. I should ignore it. Instead, I typed. Hi. That's okay. I'm glad you enjoyed the dinner. A pause followed. Then the typing bubble appeared. And disappeared. And appeared again. Daniel. You have a calming presence. It stayed with me longer than I expected. My breath caught. I almost laughed. That should have been the moment I stopped. The moment I closed the conversation and told myself this wasn't a door I wanted to open. But something inside me, something honest and reckless, leaned forward instead. That's kind of you to say, I replied. Another pause. Daniel. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable the other night. I thought about that look. About the way time had seemed to stop. No. Iti patsluli. You didn't. That was it. That was the first line crossed. Not with touch. Not with words anyone else would recognize. But with intention. Our messages didn't become frequent all at once. They grew slowly. A question here. A comment there. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But they were consistent. He asked about books I liked. Music I listened to while cooking. What I did when the house was quiet. And for reasons I didn't fully understand, I answered honestly. I found myself waiting for his replies, not anxiously, but attentively. As if each message was a small window opening in a room I hadn't realized was dark. At night, guilt crept in. It whispered questions I didn't want to answer. Why does this matter so much? Why does it feel different? What are you really looking for? I still loved my husband. At least I thought I did. But love had become routine. Predictable. Safe. And Daniel felt like curiosity. Like possibility. Like a version of myself I had forgotten. The next time I saw Daniel, it was unplanned. Mark and I ran into him at a cafe near the office. He stood when he saw us. Smiled politely. Said all the right things. But when his eyes met mine, there was something new there. Something shared. Something private. A secret that existed quietly between us. Invisible to everyone else. And in that moment, standing beside my husband, I realized something that sent a chill through me. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was becoming real. That night, as I lay awake once more, one thought repeated itself no matter how hard I tried to silence it. Some lines don't feel dangerous when you step over them. They feel honest. And that's what makes them impossible to walk back from.